For more than 100 years, car designers have been in a constant, invisible fight. Their opponent? The air itself. It's this epic battle fought in wind tunnels and on supercomputers, all in a relentless quest to design a car that can just slice right through that invisible wall. So how did they do it, and where are we now? Let's get into it.
You've definitely felt this before, right? You're on the highway and you can just feel the car working hard against the wind. Well, that's not your imagination. It's a very real physical battle. The air rushing past your car affects literally everything. It dings your performance, hurting your fuel economy and your top speed. It messes with your comfort, creating all that wind noise. It can even make the car less stable. This isn't just about going fast. It's about making the whole driving experience better.
Okay, so if we want to understand how designers win this fight, we first have to really understand the opponent. What exactly is this invisible wall that we're all driving into every single day? Well, the enemy has a name: aerodynamic drag. It's really just the force of the air pushing back against your car as you try to move forward. The best way to think about it is like trying to walk through a swimming pool. You can feel the water pushing back on you, right? Air does the exact same thing. It's just that at highway speeds, that push becomes a massive, powerful force.
So to beat this invisible force, you've got to know its playbook. Let's break down the actual science of drag so we can understand the rules of the fight.
Now, here is the single most important and kind of brutal relationship you have to understand. Drag doesn't just increase with speed, it increases with the square of your speed. What does that mean? It means if you double your speed, say from 30 to 60 miles per hour, you don't just get twice the drag. Oh no, you get 4 times the drag. This is exactly why aerodynamics becomes so incredibly important the faster you go.
And this is the full math behind that force. Now, don't worry, this isn't going to be a physics test. Most of the stuff in this equation, like how dense the air is, well, a car designer can't do anything about that. But there are 2 critical parts in here that designers can absolutely attack to win this battle.
And those 2 weapons are the car's frontal area and its drag coefficient. Frontal area, or A, is easy. It's basically how big the car is from the front. A bigger target has to push more air out of the way. Simple. The drag coefficient, or CD, that's all about the car's shape. It's just a number that tells you how slippery the car is. So to win, designers have 2 choices: make the car smaller or make its shape slipperier. So, armed with this pretty basic knowledge, the first pioneers of car design started their attack on drag. Let's take a look at some of the earliest challengers in this fight.
You can really break down the story of this whole battle into 4 main chapters. It all started with just basic boxy shapes, then moved into this amazing era of streamlined cars, where the science really started taking off. And that brings us all the way to today, with our modern obsession with optimizing every tiny detail.
In the very beginning, designers just looked around for inspiration from other fields. I mean, it makes sense. The torpedo shape, which they pretty much lifted directly from ship design, was a really logical first try at making something that could cut through a fluid. They also looked up to the skies. The airship, or teardrop shape, was pretty much the most streamlined form anybody knew of at the time. So you got these wild cars, like this Rumpler, that basically tried to be a Zeppelin on wheels. It seems like a perfect idea, doesn't it?
And again, from the water, you get the boat tail. The whole idea was to taper the back of the car so the air could just flow off smoothly. You know, these were all really brilliant, intuitive ideas, but they all shared the exact same fundamental flaw.
All of these early attempts forgot one giant factor: the road. A car doesn't just fly through empty space like an airship does. It moves inches away from a solid surface. This ground effect completely changes how the air flows around the car, and it meant these early streamlined cars were never quite as good as everyone hoped.
So once they figured that out, well, that led to the next great phase of development. Engineers stopped just copying shapes from boats and blimps and started to really understand the unique physics of a car. They were about to crack the code.
And the scale of this breakthrough was just incredible. I mean, look at this. A typical car from the 1920s had a drag coefficient of about 0.64. But a car designed by Paul Géré, a guy who actually understood this whole ground effect thing, had a CD of just 0.30. He cut the drag by more than half, without even making the car that much smaller. This was absolutely revolutionary. Okay, so this led to a pretty logical conclusion, right? The ideal shape, the teardrop, still seemed to be the answer. You just had to design it with the ground in mind.
So the perfect car should have a long, pointy tail, right? Problem solved? Well, there was just one tiny problem: reality. See, aerodynamic perfection is one thing, but practicality is a whole other beast. I mean, who's going to buy a car with a 20-foot-long pointy tail that has no room for your luggage or even a back seat? The ideal shape was just completely unusable for a normal car. And the solution that engineers came up with was totally counterintuitive, pioneered by a guy named Notebooklm. He discovered that if you take that ideal long tail and just chop it off abruptly, the air kind of behaves as if the tail is still there. It's wild. This creates a small, controlled pocket of air that keeps the drag super low, but gives you a practical, usable car shape. The comeback was an absolute stroke of genius. So the comeback and these other huge discoveries, they really laid the foundation for the modern era. The fight wasn't about finding brand new shapes anymore. It was about perfecting the ones we had. And this kicked off the age of optimization. You can see this progress so clearly if you look at a company like Citroën. Over almost 30 years, they were just constantly chipping away at that drag coefficient. A tiny improvement here, a little refinement there. It wasn't one giant leap, but the steady march of small gains, taking their CD all the way from 0.38 down to 0.33. And it's the same story even for high-performance brands like Porsche. Sure, sometimes styling or cooling the engine had to take priority. You can see that with the 911, but the overall trend was always towards being more slippery. The 924 from 1975 managed an incredible CD of 0.33. By this point, every car maker was in the game. Today, the battle against drag has become a game of millimeters. It's won by tweaking the curve of a corner by the tiniest amount, refining the shape of a side mirror, adding little spoilers, and making sure the entire underside of the car is as smooth as possible. The big, revolutionary shape victories were won decades ago. Now, it is all about that painstaking, detailed optimization. But all that might be about to change. Think about it. Electric cars don't need those giant grills on the front to cool a big engine, and that removes one of the biggest aerodynamic compromises that designers have always had to deal with. So, after a century of fighting this invisible war, are we about to see the next great breakthrough? It's a pretty fascinating thing to think about.